Alright, hello everybody. Today I'm going to be going over T2 units and how they compare to T1 units. In this video I will be specifically talking about Armada bots. So just looking at the Armada T1 bots and their costs, they're roughly, they're like 300, or I'm sorry, not 300, 100-ish. Pawns are a bit cheaper at 50 and ticks are extremely cheap at 17. But ticks have a large line of sight, and so they're actually kind of nice to have in your army a little bit towards, in the early game when you have T1 units, just because they can see a bit further. So you can actually see things to rocket them a little bit easier. Like any projectile that has a chance to miss, will have an easier time if they're not dealing with radar blips. But yeah, a lot of T1 units have line of sight that's closer to like 300, 400. So having some of those, like having a tick at 600 is quite nice. In T2, you can do things like build a radar, a mobile radar bots. All vehicles, all bots have this radar bots. Aircraft have a, they have a radar kind of guy too, and so do ships. The ship one is the carrier. But yeah, radars are nice because, not only for the long mobile radar that they provide, but they also provide 900 line of sight, which is one of your best bets for T2, like seeing further. T2 units in general have a bit more range than T1 units. But yeah, let's just go down the line a bit and talk about each one. So we have our Sprinter, which is sort of the pawn of the T2 world. They are quite fast, they're faster than pawns, they do a bit more damage. I will say that generally if you're trying to do a raid, a lot of people will still do them with pawns because pawns are quite a bit cheaper and they don't really have, like, pawns have like, a little over 300 hit points. Sprinters have closer to 700. So they do take a little bit more damage, but for their cost, and the time to build it, people oftentimes just don't do too many raids with sprinters. But they can catch like certain units off guard. Certain things like fat boys or things that attack slowly, they can kind of get in there and surprise them. Fat boys are not only slow, but they are, I'll just build one here. They're slow and they do like a big heavy shot and they attack slowly. So like a sprinter can easily just like walk around or run up. There I did a bad job and got hit, but I think you might get the idea. That's they can close the gap very quickly and run around this fat boy and deal damage. And then the fat boy might even like deal friendly fire to other nearby allies if it's trying to attack a sprinter. But yeah, I guess to talk about the fat boy now, since I have him out, it's a lot of damage. It's 800 damage per shot, which is significant. It has a reasonable range, sitting at what is it here, 700, and as much as 120 AoE damage. Fat boys are quite tanky, 7,800 hit points, but they are quite slow. They can attack in any direction, and they do large amounts of damage to balls of units. So if your opponent is bullying up a lot, a fat boy could be nice. But it is something that's hard to retreat with if you go too deep, so you want to be careful with trying to keep them kind of further back. Their range is for T2, this is pretty mild. This is it's like quite a bit longer than T1, but it's really not too far for T2. Compare that with say like a rocket bot. Rocket bots have only 475 range, so it's not that far, compared to this. Again, 700 range. Alright, so let's talk about the welder. The welder is your bread and butter unit for tankiness. It has about 3,000 hit points. It only costs 350 metal, and it does a nice chain lightning attack. Obviously there's no enemies here, but this attack would spread to nearby units as well. It's not a huge attack, it's quite light at 220 per hit. But again, it's good for anti-spam. Like if someone's spamming pawns or someone's spamming ticks, they can clear that out a lot easier than other units can. The gunslinger. The gunslinger is it's an interesting unit. It's very unique in a way. It costs a bit more at 650 metal, and they take a second to like pull their guns out to shoot. So they're not really that great in terms of dealing with things like, you know, like what's it called? Spam. It's not good at dealing with pawns and ticks necessarily. But if you can get a gunslinger out early, it can do quite well against T1 units. And then it also has the special ability of fast learning. Fast learning basically means that not only does it gain hit points and attack speed from leveling up, it also gains a bit of range, and it levels up a bit faster than other units. So initially not as strong, but like if you can pull one out and get some kills with it early on against T1, it can do quite well. The Hounds. So the Hounds is another unit that you'll commonly see. It has a pretty large range. It outranges all T1 towers. Let's see, the range is 650, so it's almost as much as the Fat Boy. And so it's quite good for its cost. It only costs 300 metal. And so you'll oftentimes see a mass of these. They do have two different types of shots. Right here you're seeing the heavy plasma shot, which is kind of like a lob attack. If these are balled up, they can shoot over each other. But if you put it into Gauss, they cannot. So Gauss is more of like a direct, you know, line to the attack points, and it's a little bit more usable when you're dealing with things that are, you know, dealing with things that are getting close to the Hound, or if they're dealing with things that are fast enough to avoid the big lob shot of the Hounds. Again, here's the heavy plasma. I guess I'll change my view down so you can kind of see that it lobs a bit. So this fires over each other, and the closer it is, the more of a lob it is. I'm sorry, the further away it is, the more of a lob the attack is. But then, yeah, the Gauss, more of a direct fire. So the Gauss deals significantly less damage. Yeah, so the top one here is the Gauss. It has 170 burst damage. And the plasma lob attack is 255, and the lob also does AoE, whereas the Gauss does not. So generally, you don't want to use the Gauss unless like you can't hit the target with the other plasma attack. But yeah, they're also quite quick for what they do, so they can easily deal with T1 maces or centurions or whatnots. They also do quite a bit of damage against pawns. That's actually a sprinter, so that's going to take a little bit more hits. But yeah, just like one hit and the pawn is below half. So 2 shots on pawns, and with the AoE, if the pawns are clumped up, they can do quite well there too. Actually, why don't we just simulate that real quick. Meanwhile, I'll start producing some more units. Alright, so here, let's just make a ball. You know, because sometimes, you know, you send your army out, you don't think about it. You know, they're just sitting there, and you know, your opponent can, you know, not accidentally, but you know, oh wait, what? Oh, it's on Gauss. Okay, so that was the Gauss damage actually. That does the 50%. Here's the lob. Deals less damage the further away from the, you know, the actual attack point is. but like against pawns and stuff, this is quite nice, especially since they can do it from so far away. Yeah, 650 range is it's not like a ton, but it's, you know, it's definitely more than T1 units. So our next unit here is the sniper. Sniper shots take energy to fire. They take 500 energy per shot. Snipers are slow to attack, but they have very good range. 900 range is pretty significant. There's no real AoE damage here, but it does pick off units quite quickly, or heavy units quite quickly. Each shot does 2,500 damage, but they take a long time to reload. They take 10 seconds to reload. And they also take time to pull their weapon out. One of the things about the sniper is it requires a very clear line of sight. Like the attack itself is fairly low to the ground. So if I moved some units, if I moved some units in front of the shot in any way, it just won't fire. Or I guess they're dead because apparently the sprinters are actually quite short. Oops, I keep doing that. Let's see what the line of the line of attacks up here. That no wonder. But yeah, this next shot should be blocked. Yeah, so it's blocked here. Has been moved them out of the way, so now it's not blocked. But here, I wonder if it's blocked or not. Let's just look at that real quick. Yeah, so even here it's blocked. Still blocked. Not blocked. Okay. So units standing, like short units standing directly in front of them, it can fire over. But you know, as these units get closer to the target, it's harder to fire, or it's harder to have a clear line of sight or a clear line of attack, I guess. They're also blocked by terrain. If the, you know, like even attacking. Actually, can we find some good terrain for this? I don't know if we can, but it is hard to attack certain locations. Here they can because it's uphill. But once you get to like a flatter area without the incline, it's harder for them to actually fire on that position. Yeah, so here he's in range, but the hill blocks it, which can make it very annoying to try to use these. The other thing is they get blocked by each other a bit. Just to get into it a little bit, because these are a little bit harder to use than other units. But they can definitely block each other, so you don't want to clump them up too hard. Like this guy cannot attack whatsoever. Actually, why don't we just have all these guys attack? Yeah, and these are so clumped together that none of them are firing. So like, you know, you gotta kind of spread them out a bit. I noticed that if they're too close to their neighbor, they will not attack. I think that has to do with the positioning of the weapon. Okay, so here we have a line of snipers. We'll see how many of them attack. Okay, we need more energy, so I'm just going to produce one of these real quick. Boom. Okay. By the way, so this is just a test against a null AI or an AI without any control. And I typed in /cheats, and then I typed in /no cost. So that way I can instantly build stuff. But here, so these snipers are attacking, but these two are not. So they're like getting in each other's way to attack. Let's try a slightly different formation. So here, I'm surprised that this guy can't. Oh, I guess it's a line of sight issue, or not a line of sight. His buddy's blocking the shot, so he's not going to fire. But here is a little bit better of a, what's it called? You know, firing positions for them. Like a little bit more spread out is better. Because if you clump them up too much, let's see, can I get this guy a little bit closer? Okay. A little bit closer. This will happen like if you add, or if you have too many snipers. It'll just be harder for them to attack because they'll be so close together. Alright, so here only 3 of these snipers, of these 6 snipers, are attacking. Because they're just like too close to their neighbor. And I can't even like it doesn't matter the angle, it's just like they aren't attacking because their neighbor is too close. So yeah, weird quirky stuff with snipers. Your anti-air bot is kind of like your standard anti-air. It's just like the T1. There is one notable difference though. Because they're both amphibious, they're both anti-air only. And they both have similar ranges. The T2 has more damage and a bit more health. But the T1 version, you know, it has 2 attacks. It has missiles and just ground to air. You know, it's anti-air. It does ground to, or anti-air stuff. One of the interesting things about anti-air in this game is it doesn't have like direct damage. Like the DPS and the bursts like don't really show damage. But the modifiers are like crazy. So it's, you know, 11,000% damage to bombers and fighters, and that's just kind of interesting that it's done that way. But it is what it is. Looking at the T2 version, in fact, I will. Okay, here we go. All right, so they have the missiles. They have, well, actually, I don't even know what that missile thing is. That might be just like from something else, from like a previous thing that's no longer in or something. I don't think the missile is anything. But they have a long range ground to air missile launch attack, does more damage. They also have a flat cannon. But yeah, generally speaking, you know, if you want anti-air, just get anti-air. There's really not too much to say about that otherwise, because, you know, you need anti-air, get anti-air. Fat Boy we already talked about. In case you don't know, there is a page 2 for this lab. Same thing with the Cortex bots, and actually the Cortex vehicles as well. But yeah, page 2, you have stuff like Decoy Commander. So Decoy Commander, it functions like the enemy will just see Commander here. It will not say Decoy. It has a D-gun. It has some buildings it can make. It has 300 build power. You may notice it can build mines. It can build some defenses. It can build, you know, some basic economy buildings. But no, it can't build any production factories. The D-gun does not do full damage. I'm not sure if it'll kill these. Yeah, it doesn't even kill a sniper in one shot. It does have the capture ability. Where is it here? So it can capture just like the regular commander. Like it basically has all the same, you know, abilities as the regular commander, just like a weaker version. Like it also has, it can also, you know, if you self-destruct, the self-destruct is, it's just confetti. It doesn't actually do anything. It's sort of just to say like, hey, surprise, this was actually a decoy, not a real one. But it can be useful for build power and stuff. I wouldn't really recommend it because it does cost a lot more than, say, a build turret, or sorry, a construction turret. Moving on, you have the Platypus, which is the Armada amphibious bots. So these in particular, there's no water on this map for me to show you, but they float on top of the water. And they can attack from the water, but they cannot attack stuff underwater. So they're nice for just, you know, quickly running through, you know, a bit of water to assault a location really quickly. They don't do a ton of damage or anything like that. They do have anti-air. But yeah, it's kind of like trying to assault a base with sprinters, except they're amphibious and can go over the water. They're not great at fighting by any means. Generally speaking, amphibious units are, you know, they're weaker than their land-only counterpart. And that's to make up for the fact that they're amphibious and can cross the water. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Just holding down a key by accident. Damn it, I just did it again. Alright, well now we got a bunch of spies. But yeah, so Armada has 2 types of spiders, Cortex only has 1. But to show this off a little bit, this Weber is a unique kind of spider. It's an like all spiders are all-terrain, but the Weber in particular has an MP weapon. So it doesn't really do like, it doesn't really do damage, but it can stun. And it's kind of nice to crawl around with these if you pair them up with the Recluse. The Recluse is a rocket spider. It doesn't have a gigantic range, it only has 600. It attacks kind of slowly. It's not really like... Yeah, it's not a great unit for fighting with, but you can crawl along the walls and like do some interesting things with them to harass a base or something. They do significant... or they do moderate damage, I should say. 600 is fairly moderate. But yeah, being able to go where other things cannot go makes them, you know, makes it so that the rest of their stats are a bit weaker. Yeah, being able to crawl along the walls. I've seen a couple of cheeky plays with spiders. But yeah, pairing the Weber with the Recluse, you know, you can stun the target and then fire some rockets at it and get out of there, type of thing. And they aren't like terribly expensive. Like compared to the sharpshooter, the Fat Boy, the Gunslinger, these are the expensive T2 Armada bots. But yeah, not too expensive, but can do some like weird cheeky stuff with them. The Platypus very cheap as well. I know I didn't really talk about that. So let's talk about the bomb. So the bomb is an interesting unit. It's amphibious, and it's actually recommended to use against things like ships, because not a lot of ships can attack under the water, and these can go under the ships on the ocean floor, and then detonate. Bombs do not show damage if you just hold space. Like it's kind of like a dummy self-destruction, or it's a dummy weapon to kind of set off the self-destruction, or set off the explosion. But if you hold shift in space, it'll show the you know, the death explosion damage and the self-destruction damage. So for bombs, or for these bombs anyway, if they just die, they do 2,000 damage. So it's kind of like a Baneling that does 2,000 damage. They don't have a lot of hit points, so they do die rather quickly. But yeah, again, under the water, they don't really, you know, it's harder for them to be attacked. And also, if you transport them and the transports explode, they will deal damage, but the damage will be in the air. But another thing that I've been maybe thinking about is adding stuff like, you know, doing like transports and transporting the bombs in, and then trying to get them to land in the enemy base. It's a fairly cheap way to deal some damage since the bombs are only 65 metal. You know, this is slightly more expensive than a pawn. You know, so very cheap for how much damage they do. If you self-destruct them, they do significantly more damage at 3,350, and they have a bigger AoE when they do that. So to look at that, you can hold X and space. So the red ring around the bomb right now is when it just dies flat out, like if something kills it. The pulsating yellow-red ring is the self-destruct radius. So if you do Control D, if you're on grid, it's Control B. But yeah, this unit instantly detonates. And it's quite a bit of damage, so 3,000 is nothing to laugh about. The Cortex has 2 bombs that I'll talk about a bit more later, but one of them is cloakable. So you can do some like cheeky stuff with the fact that they're cloaked. They're a bit more expensive, but they can do some cool stuff. So the Armada anti-nuke is on the bots. Anti-nuke will automatically fire, but it does have to charge up its missile. It costs some resources to produce the missile, and you know it doesn't have as much radius as the like structure anti-nuke. But if you're trying to protect your army, this is a very reasonable thing to buy. The Cortex, or I'm sorry, the Armada vehicle does not have this option, so it's kind of like a nice perk to going bots. Just being able to do that. These are a good thing to gift to allies, you know, so that their army doesn't get nuked. But also they are fairly expensive, so you don't really want to get a ton of them. You know, I would consider maybe, you know, getting a regular static anti-nuke at your base to help yourself and nearby allies, because the radius of that thing is like, it's like this, you know, it's quite large. So you want to position that so it protects as many people as possible. But when it comes to protecting your army out in the fields, you know, the umbrella is a nice choice, or any anti-nuke is a nice choice to have like one, and then if you hear nukes going off and stuff, then you might want to get some for your allies if they don't have the option to build the mobile anti-nuke. But that pretty much covers it for the Armada bots on tier 2. Hope you guys found this video useful. I will be doing videos on the rest of T2 when it comes to Armada and Cortex. Thanks for watching.